just don't want to promote it and then have it go south someday. But it's going to go up. It's going to go down. It's a way for the general public, I guess, to get in on speculation the globalists don't control. But I just don't like the secret providence of Bitcoin. I wonder if Max Keiser really knows. But we're about to go back to him. What I wanted to say here is it's way up right now in its history. What's next in the economy? What's going on with China? Why is this happening now? Is Soros right? I mean, obviously, he says there's crashes all the time to manipulate stuff and has brought down more countries than, you know, the Germans could in World War II, which he also fought on their side, of course. We can't forget that. What a wonderful person. Where is all this going? Is Soros right?
Well, yeah, I do want to talk about Bitcoin at some point. But to get to your question about Soros, he did come out this week and say that this looks like 2008 all over again. And I guess what's different now is that we have the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is now on the verge of collapse, and the U.S. has really picked a fight with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, first they tried to undermine the U.S. fracking industry by crashing the price of oil themselves because they are the swing producer in the OPEC cartel. But once the price of oil started to crack, it unleashed geopolitical tensions everywhere and brought Russia in, China in. Iran is now taking an adversarial position against Saudi Arabia. So this is really quite epic. And the U.S. is at a loss because it's very difficult for them to support Saudi Arabia when they're beheading people every day, dozens and dozens of people. But they have a long-standing antagonism toward Iran. So that's, of course, problematic. Russia is on the side of Iran, but Russia is supplying the U.S. with vital intelligence in killing off the jihadis and the extremists in Syria. So that's a bit of a problem. So I'd say, unlike 2008, this is the big difference this time, is that look at the price of oil, it's crashing down. This means that all the fracking rigs in America are not profitable. It's a complete waste of money. For one, it means that these big oil industry titans, the big companies, are losing money hand over fist. And of course, because oil is the most traded commodity in the world, you see the stock markets are, I think, reflecting in large part the fact that oil is down and the Chinese economy is down. Chinese economy has obviously been the beneficiary of a multi-year money pumping bubble and artificial currency suppression through pegging their currency to the dollar, which gave them this an enormous export business for a number of years. But now that is unwinding, and it's a huge, if you remember, Alex, the Rube Goldberg machines we used to build as kids, where you build these extravagant little machines where to get the marble across the road, it goes through 20 different bells and whistles and trapdoors. Everything is connected in a very esoteric way.
Byzantine.
A Byzantine way. Once it starts to collapse, it all falls down. So we have the effect of a big bubble being blown that we've all benefited from for 20 years, but now it's coming unglued, and so it's on the way down. And unfortunately, the genesis of this has been criminality, but there's no attempt to put the bankers in jail. Instead, they believe that their policies need to be tweaked, that they need to print more money. This is the huge fallacy, if you want to call it the liberal fallacy, is that they believe, and Paul Krugman at the New York Times being a good example, that these problems can be solved by printing more money. They refuse to accept the fact that the problems are the result of printing money and not having a sound economy with sound money. And so that's
well, Max, let me say this to you. You're obviously a shrewd guy. We're a top stockbroker, invented the Hollywood Stock Exchange. Is one of the models of the virtual trading systems. And you're a big fish. A lot of famous people, the Soroses, the Baldwins, all of them. So you're an insider to a certain extent. But I think, because I've had dinner with you, I've hung out with you quite a bit. I mean, I know you're sharp. But obviously, and I'm not being condescending, I mean, they're not failing. Krugman's not failing. This has all been beautifully planned. They admit it's been beautifully planned to implode the whole world, give themselves the aid to save the world over and over again every decade. and to consolidate power, create a global cashless society where they're tax exempt and control everyone through electronic gulags, the term you coined, the casino gulag, and to basically take over the whole planet's resources with carbon taxes selectively enforced to shut down all competition. So it is a hellish plan. They are devastating tacticians. They are the greatest evil the earth has ever faced. They are Hitler, Stalin, Mao, rolled into one. We are in devastatingly bad shape. They are vicious, and only admitting just how hardcore and premeditated they are will we defeat them. It's easy to say Paul Krugman's full of bull, or everybody else is full of bull. Lying to they're not dumb. They're lying to their enemy. I mean, you know, that's what's happening. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let me address that. That point that you're making. So what you're suggesting is that these guys, it's not that they're just dumb or stupid, or there's a premeditation involved. There's a calculated analysis, and they're ripping people off blind, and that is a byproduct of what I believe to be the case, where these folks are inculcated or indoctrinated in what you could call market fundamentalism. In other words, take a Paul Krugman, for example. Yes, he is not a dumb guy, but it's not that he's so much doing this by premeditation, but he has been indoctrinated in the belief that what he is doing is in God's he's
sure,
godlike.
I know. They say
God's
that.
will.
That's the religion, I think, for the...
But I believe that they believe that. I think that that's why I equate them to suicide bombers are equal to suicide bankers.
They're cultists.
Okay? They're cultists. Suicide bombers believe that they are they're going to kill themselves and people around them because they believe in their fanaticism. They misquote the Quran. And they same thing with market fundamentalists. They would read Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations and draw completely
sure, but let's expand
conclusions
on that. They say it's free market when they create fraudulent, counterfeit financial instruments and then scapegoat free market. As you pointed out, explain to people the difference between a real free market system versus this cooked, rigged thing where the top 6 or 7 big banks are exempt from taxes and can create fraud that we back up and pay for and too big to fail. That's the opposite of free market.
There's two major schools of economics the past 100 years. One is socialism, one is capitalism. In socialism, the state makes sure that everyone is provided for and you don't have entrepreneurs breaking out and becoming billionaires. Then there's capitalism, where you have people breaking out and becoming billionaires, but there's a lot of people who are the losers. And there's risks and there's rewards. Now, that system of economics in America served well for a long time. But what happened starting 40 years ago when the U.S. went off the gold standard and we brought in monetarism, which is this cultist religion of worshiping central banks, we brought in this idea that anytime the economy slips or anytime the market slips, that the monetarist overlords at the Fed are going to prevent that risk from appearing in anybody's bank account. So they keep bailing out the banks. They keep bailing out the stock market. And that's the complete opposite of free market capitalism. It is much more similar to socialism. In fact, America is a socialist country. It's a communist country run by the Politburo, called the Federal Reserve Bank, and the 12 members of the central banking and the Federal Open Market Committee. The price discovery that goes into real free market capitalism has been abolished. The stock market is not priced based on earnings or value. It's based on circulating free money by crooks. The gold and silver market does not, the demand for gold has never been higher, but the price is down because it's not true price discovery, because it's not free market capitalism.
And how long can the artificiality go on?
It can go on until you have an event like 2008 where banks stop lending to each other because they don't believe this fundamentalism anymore. You know, imagine two jihadis are in the desert and they decide that they're not going to kill each other, and boom, the jihadism dies. Wahhabism is over because you can't find any more suckers to go blow themselves up. Well, when they run out of people that are willing to commit this massive market fundamentalist fraud, then you run out of suckers. The emperor has no clothes, and you start to see it unwind. And we're starting to see that now because these tend to happen in cycles around 6 or 7 year cycles. If you go back to the crash of '87, then the bond market crash of 94, then the dot-com crash of 2000, then the subprime crash of 2007. So here we are in 2016, and we're having a crash. It could be basically a China crash, let's call it at this time. So this is right on schedule. You know, I said this crash was coming a couple of years ago, but I didn't anticipate that the European Central Bank, which has had a history of being a prudent bank, would open up its balance sheet and take in $10 to $15 trillion.
Sure, there's like an arms race. There's an arms race of debt right now. And obviously, if the elites get first use of the money, they're going to keep saying it's okay. But they're building armored redoubts for themselves everywhere now. 5 years ago, they wouldn't admit that. Now they do. 5 years ago, they wouldn't admit they rig all the markets.
What's the best performing currency of 2015? Would you happen to would like to make a guess?
You're going to tell us it's Bitcoin.
It is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has been the best performing currency every year for the past, since it came into existence.
And I've never been an enemy of it, and I never got involved in it because they'll claim it's crooked or something and arrest me. So maybe I'm mad I never got involved in it, but I've been a supporter of the idea.
The basis of Bitcoin is, I can sum it up in one word: encryption. You know, encryption is how George Washington.
So that's the value, is the privacy.
Yes, and that's how George Washington won the Revolutionary War, was through the secret messages and encryption. That was a big part of it. Encryption is huge. Encryption protects our privacy. Here in the UK, they want to pass what's called the Snoopers Charter, which means that the government wants to kill encryption. They don't want anything to be encrypted.
Which will kill the internet.
It'll kill the internet. It'll kill a lot of things. But there is, in my opinion, those who support Bitcoin are fighting that fight. They're fighting the fight against governments.
No, I totally agree with you. I just don't like speculation, but it is a people's speculation. And it's
well, forget the speculation. I'm not even saying you could never own a Bitcoin and still believe in the value.
No, I do. I just don't want to make a recommendation and then have not go well. But Max, Bitcoin's got many years behind it now. Looks solid. Looks like it's emerged as the first true global independent currency of value. And I think the fact that it just keeps surging shows how discredited the mainline.
No state, no bank. No state, no bank.
I hear you. It's revolutionary. I've just reserved judgment, but it looks better and better, Max. I salute you. By design, they want us lined up like poor Russians in the Soviet Union for our sausages. Run by a bunch of billionaire scum that are tax exempt. Final minutes with Max Keiser in this segment and the next. Then Rob Dew takes over from the Situation Room studio. He'll be discussing the call to impeach Obama, the rash of rapes in Europe. David Knight will join Rob in studio to talk about backstabber Paul Ryan, who's fighting to keep Obama in office. Let me ask you a question, Max Keiser. You know, we'll get back into Bitcoin in the next segment. We can do 5 more minutes the next hour. I mean, I was for impeachment of Bush. I really am nonpartisan, but they call me right-wing as I'm pro-gun and like lower taxes. I mean, what idiot wouldn't when the major billionaire groups are basically tax-exempt and lobbying to screw me out of my little bit of money and my staff out of a little bit of money they keep? I mean, it's just ridiculous if people are informed. But, man, Obama's got to be impeached on the open borders and flying refugees in and not even having IDs and just turning them loose and coming after the guns outside of law, saying Congress has got to get in line, so I can't wait for them to act. I mean, persecuting the media, the IRS persecutions. I mean, I've never thought such precedents would be nakedly set. And then I fear if they get some neocon like Jeb Bush in, I mean, it'll just get worse. I mean, this is sick. What do you think's going on that front? And my big push to...
Yeah, well, let me ask you a question.
I mean, that's the question. I mean, what do we do about Obama? I mean, we just let him continue to do this?
Obviously, the past week was highlighted by the big gun speech. So that's definitely in the news. So let me ask you a question. I know you follow the gun issue, obviously. It's a big issue. And I am always looking at this issue myself. And so I want to ask you a question. So what would happen? And I haven't really thought through this. I'm really genuinely curious what you would think of this idea. You know, what would be the situation if gun owners were required to buy insurance to go with that gun? So when you buy a gun, you need to buy insurance to go with that gun. Similar to the way when you learn to get a car, you need car insurance. So the damage that's done, you know, by accidents or et cetera.
The power to tax is the power to destroy. They're using Obamacare to take over the economy as a private tax corporations. Next, it'll be a tax for a baseball bat or insurance for a knife.
But insurance is not a tax. It's a way
Supreme Court ruled it is
to spread the cost.
Oh, come on.
Of this.
Right? No, the cost is 12,200 people dead a year on average, Max, and about 7,000+ commit suicide, which is their right to do. I don't support people killing themselves, but I get it. You got bone cancer or something, blow your head off. I mean, I see it.
But I mean, like the folks, the government is coming down, and if I read Obama's,
they want to disarm us to enslave us, brother. And
they're going to put fingerprint sensors on the guns, right?
Yep, that'll bankrupt all the old ones and make all the others illegal. This is a plan to get the guns.
Okay, so
I have the mayor pro tem of Austin who met with Bloomberg admitting after they register, they confiscate, Max.
Okay, but after
there's no debate, they want our guns.
But wouldn't it be in the interest of those supporting the gun lobby?
No, compromising. No gun laws, none. Let felons have guns. Let everybody have them because criminals are going to have them anyways. Zero gun laws.